The Seattle Mariners had arguably one of the best rotations in the majors this past season, but somehow, as a team, they still managed to disappoint. So today, I'm going to deep dive those Mariners and talk about their 2024 season and look ahead to their 2025 season on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, riding solo today, and if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, you hit that little bell below. It will subscribe you to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And also, if you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And lastly, but most importantly to Matt, give us a chance on the Subtext platform. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth personalized experience through text messaging alerts right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And all right, guys, I teased it at the top. Today, we're going to be talking about those Seattle Mariners. We're getting to the point in team reviews where we're getting to some really interesting teams that have a lot of good players, and the Mariners are no exception. The Mariners had a pretty... I do want to say disappointing, and it's tough to say disappointing for a team that actually finished the year with 85 wins and 77 losses. They just missed out on playoffs. Tough season for Seattle. I think the best way to handle this team is just to get into the players. As far as the backs go, they were lacking. They were really lacking. They went out and traded for Randy Arozarena. I believe it was at the trade deadline, and it helped, but I don't think he was the savior type of guy they were looking for. I don't think that a Randy Arozarena was going to be the savior for a Seattle Mariners team that was heavily relying on Julio Rodriguez, who we'll get into in a minute and deep dive him. But didn't really start hitting until the end of the year. So it's tough when you're a team that has, one of the best rotations in all of baseball, and then you have to deal with, a lackluster lineup. And sometimes, you might have to make a sacrifice of one of these really, really good starters to go out there and get, a key bat, or maybe this offseason we're going to see Seattle go out there and make a play for one of the bigger free agents. Don't think they're going to go for a Juan Soto, but we might see them sneak in there and grab themselves another bat or two. So, like I said, let's just get into the names here. We'll deep dive. We'll start with Mr. Julio Rodriguez. I don't think there's any other way you can start when you're talking about the Seattle team. Julio, on the whole, the numbers don't look as bad as I think it was owning him. On the season, 143 games for Julio, 567 at-bats, 76 runs, 17 doubles, 20 home runs, 68 RBIs, 24 steals. He had 38 walks, 256 strikeouts, and a 273 batting average. Last year, Julio hit the 32 home runs, had 37 steals, 100 runs, and 103 RBIs. So when we are looking at these numbers, we are quite disappointed. And, he really didn't get it going. We're going to deep dive it here in a second. But I believe he really didn't get going till, I want to say, like July. I mean, it might have even been August at that. Okay, no, I'm correct. It was July. So here's the thing. Julio, April/March, hit 256 with a bomb. Played a little bit better in May. He had 274 batting average with 3 homers and 7 steals. 206 batting average in June for Julio with 3 homers and 3 steals. Really picked it up in July. Julio did. Played 14 games, and I think he got hurt, if I remember correctly. He had 4 homers, a steal, 8 RBIs. Then August had a tough time getting it going again after the injury. 234 batting average with 2 homers. And September, October is where Julio really saved any justice to the season. He had 328 with 7 homers and 6 steals. If you look at the underlying stuff for Julio, I don't think any of the skills have gone away. He is only 23 years old, Julio Rodriguez is. He's still in the 96th percentile when it comes to sprint speed. His bat speed is elite as well. He gets that ball through the zone very quickly. He hits the ball hard still. So I'm not sure if it's just that he's a slow starter. And honestly, I think if Julio doesn't get hurt in July, we see a full season. Oh, well, not full season, but from July on to the second half for Julio, I think would have wound up being elite, and we would have seen a lot closer to what we saw last year. I don't think he would have matched it by any means, but you know what? I think Julio would have had a lot better numbers, We would have seen the average a lot higher. We would have seen, I think, maybe 28 homers. We would have seen a lot. Something more like Julio's first season, right? Maybe a little bit more speed thrown in there. And 25 steals. So next year, I don't know. I think Julio's going to be a fun little mystery bag. I think we're going to get a bit of a deal on him. You look at somebody like Aaron Judge coming into last year, where we were still taking him at the end of the first round. But 2 years prior to this, where Judge hit the 60+ home runs and had the monster season, we were taking him at the first near the first round. Talking about Julio Rodriguez this year. Coming into this year, he was coming off the board literally as the number 2 player overall behind Ronald Acuna. So I don't think we just back away from what we thought Julio was. I don't think we change our minds on it. I think we stand pat. I think if you're getting Julio at the end of the first round, I think it's going to be a bargain. I think we're going to make that play. And then you just pair him with somebody maybe a little bit more safer going into that, second round. Maybe you take I think Freddie Freeman's gonna be a third round pick this year, but a Freddie Freeman type, right? Maybe it's Vlad. Maybe Vlad is like the new Freddie Freeman. You pair, at the end of the first round, you can do a Vlad and a Julio. I think that's going to be a fun pairing. I think that will lead to success because you put an outfielder on your team where outfielder, it's a little bit better than last year. But, you give yourself a first baseman that has a lot of power that is going to hit, 300 and give you good counting stats to where you have a little bit more leeway. If Julio pans out, I think you're a championship team. If Julio doesn't pan out, maybe you have to make some adjustments to get to be that championship team. But I think either way, Julio's going to be worth the pick. I don't think we just give up on, one of the best young players in the game. I know I spent some time on him here, and we got a lot to get through, so let's just move on to this next guy. Let's talk about Randy Arozarena. As I said, he gets that trade, about halfway through the season over from Tampa to Seattle, and Seattle is not an easy park to pitch to hit in. It's more of a pitcher's park, right? So Randy on the year, just a disappointing season for Randy. Another guy that we had higher hopes for. Let's do the combined first. So let's just reach off his numbers total for the season. Randy Arozarena this year had 549 at bats, 154 games played, 77 runs, 33 doubles, 20 homers, 60 RBIs, 20 steals. And he had a 219 batting average. So I feel like it's been like literally a year-by-year decline when you're looking at batting average for Randy Arozarena. Hit 281 in 2020, 274 in 2021, 263 in 2022, 254 in 2023, and we're down at 219 now. Do I think he's a 219 hitter? No. I think Randy's going to be closer to a 230, 240 guy. A little bit of power, a little bit of speed. I think the runs and RBIs could be a little bit better in the Seattle team. I just want to see where he's going, right? Because I'll say this when it comes to fantasy baseball, and this applies to almost any fantasy sport. I think we could take almost any player. Just depends on the value. It just really depends on where you're getting them in drafts, right? Because if a guy like Randy Arozarena falls outside the top 30-ish outfielders for me, oh yeah, then I'll take him. I'll take Randy as a utility bat in a 12-man league, an outfielder number 3, a lower end outfielder number 3. I like that. The 2020 is still cool, and like I said, I think there's room to grow with the runs and RBIs. We could be looking at more of like his, even his 2023 season where Randy had 95 runs with 83 RBIs, 2020, and 254 batting average. I think if we're taking a guy like that as our outfielder number 3, our first utility bat, there's room to profit. 30 years old, though, for Randy this upcoming season. The sprint speed, 71 percentile, still good. Some of the underlying stuff isn't as, as eye-popping as you would like it to be, where Randy was really doing a great job of barreling up and hitting the ball hard in 2023. He took a bit of a step back in both in 2024. So Randy's a guy that I think we need to be careful with going into next season. And he's not a big guy. He's 5'11", 185. So I don't think the power is a safe bet, because if he drops from 20 home runs to even like 16, 17 with only 20 steals, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun. I can see a very George Springer-esque path with Randy Arozarena going forward. But as I said, it's all about value when it comes to fantasy, anything, especially fantasy baseball, though. I have two more bats for you guys. Then we're going to talk about, like I said, arguably the best rotation in baseball this past season. We're going to do that and more, so stay locked on, because those names are coming up next. And guys, real quick, I want to talk to you about my friends over at FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And guys, with the NFL season in full swing, I always like to throw this one out. I'm a self-hating Giants fan, so I'm just going to tell you, bet against the Giants. The unders on everything usually works. So you know what? That one's been fun. I watched my Giants get beat up by the Eagles this past weekend, and shout out to Saquon Barkley, man. You look great over there in Philly. We miss you over here in New York. So once again, you're going to use FanDuel to place all of these awesome bets, and that's FanDuel.com to get started today. And folks, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down that volume with all that shouting? Make the switch over to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And then once again, I want to talk to you guys about the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on the Subtext platform. It's going to be your ultimate fantasy baseball companion this offseason. Rely on Matt and I for our dynamic content. You're going to get real-time alerts right to your phone, including rankings updates, which, guys, I'm working diligently on. They are almost there. They are coming soon on the Subtext platform. Probably going to have like at least 15 or at each position. And then I think I have about 30, 40 outfielders and maybe like 70 starting pitchers. We're letting those out on Subtext soon. We got way too early bust, breakout sleepers, and more. We already sent some of those out on Subtext. I think we did way too early breakouts. Matt and I had 10 names each. We only did a couple on the podcast. So once again, on Subtext, you're going to want to make sure you join us, because that's going to be the path to your victories begin. Subscribe now, and we're going to elevate your fantasy baseball experience to a new level. And all right, guys, we're jumping right back in. Let's talk about this next guy. Interesting guy. Kind of took me a little bit by surprise. Cal Raleigh. I was down on Cal Raleigh. I was like, he's just going to hit a bunch of home runs, and that's going to be it. But you know what? I failed to realize that sometimes at the catcher position, you just need a guy that's going to hit a bunch of home runs, because the catcher position this year was really, really bad. I'll throw this out there. If you're listening this time of year, I do appreciate it. So I moved Cal Raleigh up to 6 at my catcher rankings. Might even move him a spot higher. Cal Raleigh hit, he had played 153 games this year, which is great for a catcher. 546 at-bats, 73 runs, 16 doubles, 34 homers, 100 RBIs. He stole 6 bags and hit 220. I'll take the 220 batting average with the 153 games and 34 homers played out of the catcher position. He's 27, going to be 28 in the prime of his career. Cal Raleigh actually might be somebody I target a lot next year. I think he's going to fall under the radar. I think a lot of people are going to think like, I did previously. It's just a lot of power, and that's about it. But you don't get that consistency at the catcher position a lot. The underlying stuff looks great for Cal Raleigh. Hits the ball really hard, barrels it up nicely. The bat speed is good. The only one thing, even the underlying stuff of batting average says he could hit 235. So you know what? Even if we get a couple more points on batting average, we had 232 in 2023. I just like Cal Raleigh. And with the play discipline, it kind of looks the same as it did in 2023. So, like I said, sometimes just the safe, easy bet is the right way to go. You don't need to get too fancy when it comes to the catcher position. I know I'll be honest with you, I tried to get a little bit too fancy, at the catcher position coming into last season. I think I'm going to change my strategy this year and see how that plays out for me. I just want a guy like Cal Raleigh that you could just plug him in there and you really don't have to worry about it too much for the whole season. Instead of doing I'll have this guy this week, that guy next week. It's never a fun game to play. So Cal Raleigh, I do like him going forward into 2025. Let's keep things pushing with another bat. Victor Robles. Who would have thunk we'd be sitting here in 2024 talking about the Victor Robles breakout season on the Seattle Mariners? If you had that on your board, kudos to you, because it was definitely not on mine. Let's go over the numbers. Victor Robles, comes over from the Nationals, played 91 games this season, 254 at-bats, 44 runs, 20 doubles, 4 homers, 28 RBIs, 34 steals. You heard me correct, 34 steals in 91 games. And he hit 307. And, Victor Robles is still only 27, going to be 28 next year. I believe, let me double check this. I believe he's still under contract with Seattle for next season. I hope so. Yeah, it looks like he's there till 2027. I like that for Robles. He's going to be there for at least a couple more seasons. I think he's going to be a sneaky pick. I'm predicting like maybe a 10 to 12 home run season. Could he steal 50 bags? Of course. The batting average, it looks like he's making trends, steps in the right direction with that. Where they hit this kid in the lineup is going to mean a lot. If they get Robles hitting leadoff, I think the runs could be really well. The RBIs won't be. So he'll be lackluster in runs and RBIs, but he'll be plus in average, steals, and runs. So I think Victor Robles is another guy. I think we'll be getting him definitely later than Randy Arozarena. So if you're talking about Victor Robles' utility bench bat, I think that's going to pay dividends. He'll be somebody that I'll be looking to draft a little bit of next season. Let's do one pitcher. And we're going to do this backwards. I normally do closers first, but I want to do the whole rotation together. So we are moving into their closer real quick. Let's talk about Andres Munoz. It was a weird year for Munoz. There were times where it looked like he was losing his job. There were times where he wasn't performing well. And it was really his first full season in the role. So with Munoz, he pitched in 60 games this year at a 2.12 ERA. He got 22 saves, 59 innings pitched to 77 strikeouts, and he had a 0.96 whip. So I think a lot of people, including myself, had Munoz pegged for the breakout, and I just thought the breakout was going to look different than this. I thought there was going to be a lot more strikeout upside. The whip is really cool. The whip is really good, especially coming off of a 1.26 whip in 2023. But I think there's another level. I think there's more here with Munoz. I think Munoz, the ERA could be very sticky, but I think if he throws like 60 innings next year again, you're talking about a guy who has the stuff to strike out 90 batters in 60 innings. So I would like to see that step forward from Munoz. And honestly, I forgot the ERA was, the whip was as good as it is. So really it's just a strikeout thing for Munoz. And I would like to see him be more consistent on, a month-to-month, a week-to-week basis. It's crazy to think he had this good numbers, and there were times during the year where we thought he wasn't going to hold down the job for much longer. I know, I heard, people dropping Munoz in leagues, and it was tough. It was tough. I think he's another guy, especially with, the thought is the Seattle team underperformed. They still won 85 games and only had 77 losses, just missed the playoffs. So I think we're going to get value on a lot of Seattle Mariners next year. Maybe not when it comes to starting pitching, but I think the bats and Munoz himself, I think are going to give us some value. We got the rotation up next, guys. Lock on. Stay locked on. I will be back with you with the rotation in a very short moment. And I want to talk to you about my friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Time Picks, curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, etc. Game Time has plenty of great features as well, such as their all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Their seat views, you get a panoramic view from the seat in their app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. You have Game Time's ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Your first purchase, terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, guys, and I hope you guys stay tuned because we're doing the rotation now, and the rotation is the best part of the Seattle Mariners. And let's talk about with who I think was the best pitcher in the rotation this season. It was Logan Gilbert. And honestly, I truly think if you asked 100 baseball experts, who's going to be the best starting pitcher on the Seattle Mariners going into this 2024 season, I say maybe 15 to 20 would have told you it was Gilbert. Everyone else was going Castillo or Kirby. The hype train really got behind George Kirby this past season. I know we're not talking about him, but real quick, I know the rotation as a whole, I kind of want to give them a little bit of discussion. So George Kirby was coming off the board as the 10th starting pitcher when everything was said and done, pick 39. Luis Castillo was coming off the board as the 6th starting pitcher at pick 32. And then you had Gilbert coming off the board as the 18th starting pitcher, pick 65. I think it's going to fully flip-flop. I think Gilbert goes to the top. I think Castillo goes to the bottom. I think Kirby stays where he is, right? So let's talk about what Gilbert did. 9 wins, 12 losses on the year, which is 33 starts. Had a 3.23 ERA, 208 innings, 220 strikeouts, and an 0.88 whip. This was the year we all wanted to see from Gilbert. You know, at age 27, he really took the league by storm, got that K per 9 well over, 1. And I mean, he got the way over a strikeout per inning. The whip took a step in a great direction. We even saw the FIP, fielding and independent pitching as an ERA indicator, shows you where the ERA should be rather than where it is. And Gilbert was known to just have a little bit of a higher FIP his whole career. And this year looks like he really just figured it out, put everything together. And Gilbert's a top 10. He's a top 10 starting pitcher for next season. Like I said, I think he filters in my starting pitching rankings around 7, 8, 9 range. He had all the pitches working in 2024, and I think that was the big difference because the fastball didn't get great results in 2023. Gilbert made those changes needed, and 2024 everything looked really good. He's 6'6", he's 215. He's got the frame for a great starting pitcher. I'm just really all about Gilbert. I don't really think there's much else to say, other than let's go, and then even with the pitch mix, right? Gilbert was 41% fastball in 2023. He led with his slider. He led with his slider in 2024. He went 32% on the slider, 30% on the fastball. That's an 11% change on the fastball. The slider went up about 3 to 4% as well. So I'm loving it. Like I said, not too much else to say here on Gilbert, except he will lead the charge in 2025 with the Seattle Mariners rotation. Let's move on to the old head honcho. Let's talk Luis Castillo and kind of, deep dive his season here. I want to say a little bit disappointing, especially when you had to draft him as high as you did. I wasn't doing it just because I developed my rotation differently. I was either all in at the top with one of the, the big three at the top of, with starting pitching. I was really, going Strider, Burns, or Wheeler at the top. And then if not, I was waiting. I was digging in around that Schoolboy range, which you all know, the Freddie Peralta range. I was biting Blake Snell. I was biting around there again to get my SP2. And I did all right. But I really think with Luis Castillo, a 3.64 ERA, a 1.17 whip, 175 innings, 175 strikeouts, really lost that K per 9, which we really would have liked to see a lot better. And, there's nothing particularly that stands out to me with the underlying stuff. When you look at the pitch mix, looks pretty similar to 2023. His sinker got hit a bit, at a 298, a batting average against, but he only threw it 18% of the time. Last year that was a pitch that got hit at a 239 clip. So, there's that. The fastball speed was actually down about a mile per hour. That could be it because his fastball got hit at a 165 clip in 2023. Luis Castillo is who we're talking about here from the Seattle Mariners, and his fastball in 2024 got hit at a 203 clip. That's still really good, but I think that could be causing some of the strikeouts to go away. That you definitely see that with Luis Castillo here when you're seeing the batting average literally went up about almost 50 points against that fastball. So with Luis Castillo, I think he's moving down. He's going to be more of a security blanket SP2, 3 for me. You're probably not going to wind up getting him anywhere near an SP3. He's probably going to settle in, I want to say, around like 20s for me. Probably solid around like SP20. Just not going to be a sexy pick anymore, I don't think. And Seattle's such a great park to pitch in, so you can definitely see him have more good seasons with the ERA. And, the whip is something that throughout his career has always been a little bit on the higher side for an ace-like starting pitcher. And I think, it's crazy that all the Seattle Mariners pitchers probably should have won a few more games than they did. So I think that will help for Luis Castillo, but 32 next year as well. So I'm not banking on him to be any better than he was this season. So I would consider this a baseline going forward for Luis Castillo. Let's move on to George Kirby. George Kirby, man, what happened? Once again, it's not that he had a bad year. It's not that Luis Castillo had a bad year. But we had really high expectations for this starting pitching staff, and they did very, very well. But I still just somehow expected more. Maybe that's selfish of me, guys. You can sound off if I'm being selfish. Let me know if I'm being selfish in the comments. But 33 starts for Kirby, a 3.53 ERA, 191 innings, 179 strikeouts, a 106 whip. Nothing bad, but we thought Kirby was going to take a step forward in the strikeout department. Hardly did at all. I thought Kirby could be more around a K per 9 type of guy than what he is right now. What's the difference between George Kirby and a Logan Webb right now? Is it just the control? Because even with the control that's supposed to be so amazing and pinpoint for Kirby, the whip still was worse than it was last year. He took a step in the wrong direction. So he's only 26, George Kirby is. He's 27 next year. I like Kirby. Probably be somewhere around Luis Castillo in my rankings, right? Like I said, at this point in their careers, not much of a difference between a Logan Webb and a George Kirby. And I moved Logan Webb down a lot. I think I might need to move Kirby down a little bit more too, just because even though I do think there is another level and I might get burned, it's just that we're probably still going to have to take Kirby as an SP2. I might have him a little bit over Castillo, actually. I don't know. I'm really refining my rankings, this off season so far. It's fun to sit down and actually put pen to paper. I encourage all of you guys to do it as well, because then you really have to stand on your rankings and saying, why am I placing this guy over, the next guy? As I look at Kirby's pitch mix, threw the fastball a little bit less this past year, got better results on it. The slider was, something he moved up. He threw it 19% of the time in 2023. He was up to 23% this year. So it looked like he was tinkering. It looked like he was trying to figure out what was really going to work for him. And he's got a lot of pitches. I think if Kirby, tried to focus in on maybe 4 of these pitches, keep them all around. He threw 3 of them at least 23% of the time. and got good results on all of them except the sinker. So you know what? Maybe it's the sinker. Maybe it's the sinker we need to work on with Kirby. And I'm running slow for time, so I'm going to move on from Kirby. But I do like him. And as I said, he's just going to move down. I think we were too high on him, coming into last year. So I think we need to temper our expectations going into 2025 with Kirby as well. Let's move on to Bryce Miller. Bryce Miller is somebody who I think took a positive step in this 2024 season. In Miller's, 2023 season, he was very inconsistent. The pitch mix really wasn't there. But you know what? He worked on that, and he came out in 2024. Bryce Miller did 112 games, had 31 starts, a 2.94 ERA, had 180 innings pitched to 171 strikeouts, and an 0.97 WHIP, which I love to see. He had a 3.58 FIP as well. So we could see the ERA maybe going into the low to mid threes next season, right under that K per 9 for Bryce Miller. And the control's been really, really good for the young kid. He's one that I could see getting the hype balloon around him come spring training, especially if he's pitching good, because once everyone starts deep diving and sees these numbers that Bryce Miller put up and he has the mentors around him, something I love to talk about, there's going to be helium. I just don't see there's a way that there's not helium with a guy like Bryce Miller. Got good results on, pretty much all of his pitches. The breaking stuff, maybe we want to see some more movement on some of those pitches. But, man, I think Bryce Miller is going to be good. And if we can get him, I think he's going to be a guy I'm targeting probably around my SP3, SP4. I love that. I love that for Bryce Miller. Let's see if I can sneak this last guy in. We'll talk a little bit of Bryan Woo. And, man, it's really cool when you can, do a team review and you get their whole rotation has to be spoken about. That's so awesome to see. Bryan Woo, a young pitcher, 6'2", 205 righty. This past year, 22 starts, a 2.89 ERA, 121 innings, 101 strikeouts, and an 0.89 WHIP. I think that's what Seattle's just known for with their starting pitching. They all have, very good control. They know what they're doing. The pitching coaching over there is very, very good. I'm just trying to grab Bryan Woo's deep dive stuff real quick. We'll talk about it, and then I'm really got to put a move on it. I just want to talk about his pitch mix and stuff like that. Really looked good. The underlying stuff actually really, really looked good here for Bryan Woo. The fastball got great results. So did the sinker. And he threw the fastball 49% of the time, sinker 23. I would love to see him pick a third pitch between the slider, changeup, and sweeper. Looks like the sweeper got the best results, but he threw it the least amount. So let's hope Bryan Woo can work on this. And he's going to be a guy that I think we're probably another maybe SP4, SP5. I would love to see that for Bryan Woo going into next season. But with that being said, guys, please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Also, shout out to our everydayers and listeners making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. And guys, after you make us your first listen, go check out our boy Sully over at Locked On MLB. Make him your second listen each and every day. And guys, until next time, see ya.